Welcome to the morning show, gentlemen. How are you? Chad Konarska, Joe Tolle from ATV On Demand, UTV On Demand. Gentlemen, welcome. It's been a crazy week this week. Let me get my housekeeping in order. We need to thank Elka Suspension for all the great things they're doing in the ATV industry, dominating every form of racing and recreational riding there is. If you're into ATVs, Elka's your shock. GBC Tires are also right there with them. They make some amazing products for your UTVs, your trucks, your ATVs, your sport ATVs. Not a lot of people are participating in the sport ATV industry anymore, but GBC is right there leading the way. So check those guys out if you're interested in some tires. And DBR Racing Products. These are the guys that are innovating ECU mounts and skid plates. And Joe, aren't they making some new product for?
Yeah, for the KO, we did that Jackal 200 a couple months ago, and at that time when we picked that quad up, there was really nothing on the aftermarket for it, and it was pretty good because those guys, they're trying to find their way and what their niche is, and they're quickly kind of realizing that there's a niche wide open in sport quads, and yeah, the guys at KO are very happy to see that the U.S. aftermarket's actually developing a bunch of new products for their little Jackal 200. So DBR is going to be doing some skid plates and some other things for them. And I know you're talking to them, and a number of other companies are also talking to KO about doing some aftermarket parts development. So it's a great sign for anybody who's considering developing a sport ATV. The U.S. market is hungry and willing to build bikes that they think they can extract performance of. So, yeah, a lot of exciting stuff there.
I had a huge conversation with, I would assume he's a regional sales manager or import guy. I don't even know what his title is. Brock over there at KO. Him and I had a great conversation. We'll be asking some questions of our ATV industry people or ATV listeners and followers here this week. But yeah, they have an aggressive, non-aggressive style. They want to be in, but they're a little leery of the market not being favorable. But I think they have some good stuff. You can be unhappy about a China product, which Chaz, you ride a China product, because your KTM's built in China now. But that's neither here nor there. We all have to adapt and overcome. If we want to ride and we want to stay up on things, most likely we're going to end up using some Chinese product. So whether we like it or not, just make it the best we can with the aftermarket companies we can, and let's go from there. Chaz, this doesn't really land into your wheelhouse, but we're going to talk about it. The 8-time national champion, Chad Wienen, had a get-off. He announced on social media that he's been injured. He's planning to be 100%, hopefully, by Daytona. I have seen a little bit of posting on it. Joe, have you caught up with anything with Chad at all by chance?
All I know is what you just said, is that he was injured and hoping to be back. I didn't even hear what the extent of his injuries were.
It hasn't been announced. I know he had a heating pad on his back, but they haven't talked about what he hurt or what happened. It's very rare for him to go down. So, it was a little shocking when I read that, that he had gotten off. But, I apologize for my voice, everybody. I'm just trying to get over this, whatever this foul fungus thing is that I got going on. It's taken more than a week, and the girls are shoving all kinds of stuff down my throat to make me better, but it doesn't seem to be working. But that's neither here nor there. There has been a crazy week in sporting events. Yesterday, there was quite a bit going on. Let's just jump right into the Supercross, because I know that Chaz is over there drooling. He wants to talk about it so bad. Before the race, there were 4 events. There were 4 different winners. when was the last time that we watched Supercross with 4 different winners? Can you guys remember any time?
I mean, I feel like last year, wasn't it? Like last year we had like 5. We had a handful last year, but
We
I don't feel like it came in this quick a succession.
we started the
So like,
season with 4 different winners.
yeah, yeah, like yeah. So like last year there was a lot of winners, but I think that it just there wasn't like this many this quick, and so
But
it is cool to have a situation where you end up with four in the first 4 is pretty unusual.
I think
Go ahead.
yes, yesterday was round 4. I think we've had 3 winners, right?
Yesterday was round 5.
Oh, round 5. Okay.
I
Yeah.
did my homework. I actually studied. I actually studied for the show. For the first time
Yeah,
ever, I studied for the show. Oh,
Jet was
sorry, that wasn't supposed to come out that way, but yeah, no, I actually studied, and yesterday and this morning was making sure that I had all my ducks in a row. Was checking the different websites and reading a little bit of the articles. Yeah, 4 different winners, 4 events. Plessinger getting his first win, which that's a fan favorite guy. But he also had the point
oh man,
lead
yeah,
race too.
yeah. No, I was in the stadium for Plessinger's win, and the the noise level that crowd made for him was insane. So I've been in 2 situations like that where the last year I was in Denver for when Tomac, or sorry, 2 years ago I was in Denver when Tomac won his championship, and you could hear the like where he was on the track by the crowd noise going around the stadium. Same thing when Plessinger was winning his first race in San Diego. You could hear where he was on the track from just the crowd noise in the stadium. It was incredible, and I thought it was kind of impressive that he has that kind of following in San Diego, because it's not necessarily like the cowboy crowd, but he has a following. It's impressive.
Well, Joe blew the speakers out of the thing that day when we had a show. After he won, that's all Joe could talk about in Plessinger winning the race. And he's looking his ear to ear grin now. He's still excited about it.
He's a
Oh
he's a local kid. He's a kid to me, but and I got to see him race when he really was a kid on 65s, out spanking everybody local at the gravel pit. We had some races there, and I test one of the places we go shoot at is his dad's track. So I've never met Aaron. I've met his dad a number of times, and it just he's got a great personality. I told his dad, whether he wins or loses, gets first or dead last, Aaron should be given a segment of every Supercross just to cut a promo, because I think his positive personality is just good for the sport.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Well,
he. Yeah, go ahead, Leonard.
no, I was going to say that my son and his kids love the guy, and I usually look at the guys that are winning the race, not the guys that are in the back, and I guess his antics and just his personality brings the fan base. You know, Ladies love the cowboy hat.
Yeah, and now he's having success. He's put in his what they said on the broadcast yesterday. His average finish this year has been 3.3. So he's become a podium guy. His consistency has increased incredibly from the last year, a couple of years where he's been kind of riding in that 7-8 spot. Now he's up in the 3-4 spot pretty regularly.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That was the case. I didn't go and check it out,
Yeah,
to see where exactly it all was, but that's kind of what I got out of it. You know,
I hope we see a few more mud races this year. I know that Jet Lawrence probably doesn't like it. Some guys, it's what's cool about the mud races like we had in, what was it, round 2, round 3. Anybody can win, and I don't mean anybody, but we were I think, Lenny, you and I were joking. I'm like, if you could have had a top GNCC guy show up and he could have won the whole thing maybe in the mud just because they're used to it. They ride it a lot. So, mud races, I like it because it shakes the points up. You can see different people get the win. Beginning of the season, it's like Jet Lawrence is going to sweep this. He wins round one. And last night, it was like back to Jet Lawrence. He gets out, he pulls a lead, then he doesn't extend it. We used to see in the old days, these guys would get out front, back when somebody was dominating, insert name, McGrath, Carmichael, during a decade of dominance, you'd see those guys just go out and pull a 15-second lead and just gap. But Jet is so methodical. It's like, I'm going to go out. I'm going to pull just enough room so if I make a bobble, I can maintain the lead. And then I'm not going to push it any faster than I have to go to maintain the gap. Very smart, very cerebral. I just hope that I hope we get some inclement weather from here on out, because I'm afraid if we don't, it's just going to turn into the Jet Lawrence show. But
whoa.
I like
Supercross
Jet.
is meant to be raced in a stadium environment that's dry. We're saving the mud for the outdoor races because that's where they're supposed to be. My prediction was that Jet Lawrence was going to sweep. Well, I never thought that he couldn't ride in the mud. We've had 2 dry races and 3 wet races. Is that what am I correct or incorrect?
Three dry, 2 wet.
Yeah, 3 dry, 2 wet. And I would say, like whether like Jet in the mud, it seems like he struggles a little bit, but also I feel like, man, like he just hasn't in those 2 races, he didn't get a start. And if you don't get a start in the mud, you're just hosed. So maybe, in San Diego, if he gets a start, does he run away with it? Maybe he, it's possible, but I do think he does kind of override the track a little bit. It seems like when it's wet. But yeah, Leonard, to your point though, I'm okay with an occasional mud race. I don't want to watch a mud race every single weekend, but every now and then, shake the points up, put some guys in the front that aren't normally in the front. Why not? Let's make the series more interesting. Because yeah, to your point, Joe, I really don't want this to be like the McGrath era where we know who's going to win before we even show up, and we're just excited about who's going to get second.
You're hating on Honda. You're hating because the best manufacturer of motorcycles is freaking finally coming back to the top, and we're getting rid of the freaking orange bike. Wow, I can't. I'm just kidding.
Well,
I was gonna say, I don't know if I don't. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I had a question for you. Since you're a dirt bike rider, a question I had for you. I mean, I used to ride dirt bikes when I was younger, and I've owned a few, but I haven't done a lot of back-to-back comparisons with different bikes. But one thing I've heard criticized about the Honda is a tendency for it to understeer, where it wants to knife the front end into a corner. I watched Gypsy Tales. They had an editor on there from Motocross Action who was involved in the shootout, and they were talking about, running different triple clamps and this and that and the other. I guess they're trying to add a little bit more rake to the bike to kind of make it not want to knife into the corners quite as aggressively. Do you think as a dirt bike rider, if you have a front end that tends to understeer, it tends to want to knife in, not push so much, do you think that problem becomes bigger in the mud when you don't have much grip? Does that have a tendency to make you lose the front end more?
That is a great question, and I haven't really thought about it, but now that you're mentioning it, when I do ride mud, I want less weight on the front end. I try to make there be less weight on the front end. So if the bike naturally is knifing, that makes me think that there's a lot of weight on that front end, and I think we kind of saw it with Chase Sexton too, right? Like he pushed that front end a lot, so he was putting a lot of weight on it. If I'm in the mud, I want that front end light. I don't want it to be, I want it to be able to kind of play in the rut. So yeah, I think maybe you're right. Like increasing the rate, getting a little bit of weight shifted back a little bit, it probably helps.
I'm just wondering if part of the reason that he struggled in the mud, and of course it's 90% rider at your local track. But I think once you get to that level of athleticism, especially now when there's, 5, 6 guys that are a threat to win a race, I wonder when the talent level gets that close, if something so simple as that could be why he doesn't perform in the mud. Like, and I'm not looking to blame it on the bike. But
Yeah, you are. You're a Honda hater.
no, I like Honda. No, if I was going to go buy a dirt bike tomorrow, Honda would be on the short list. I don't love working on things that much. There's, the Honda's reliable. I've owned Honda dirt bikes. I own 3 Honda vehicles right now. So, CR250s in the 90s had head shake. Everybody knew it. It was a thing.
Yeah.
That was a problem. This is just if the thing's got a knifing issue, I can't help but wonder, like, does that become exacerbated when you get into the mud, and does the rider have to fight the bike that much more to where, that might be impacting results?
Let me throw this out there. Do you think that the development of the KTM Husqvarna gas models being mostly developed in Europe, where they're dealing with more wet conditions, has something to do with the fact that machine works so well in these environments? I'm just throwing it out there because they do a lot of the development over there, and you watch these videos on social media where they're riding them in conditions that, I mean, I wouldn't go outside in, but they perform super well in muck. And you don't see that with Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, or Suzuki. What do you think, Chaz?
I think you got I think you got a good point there. Not just like where they're developing, but also like where the brand came from. Like they came from the off-road world. They came from the enduro world, right? And so the bikes they started with were very flexy. Frames had a lot of flex in them. They were designed to soak up the chatter, soak up the bumps. And so when they went, I feel like it's easier for a manufacturer to take a very flexible motorcycle and make it stiffer for Supercross than it is to go the opposite direction. So I think they started with something like that was designed for that kind of that kind of condition, and they just stiffened it up to make it a Supercross bike, as opposed to going the opposite way with the Honda Cowie and Yamaha are doing.
The KTM, from reading and watching shootouts and stuff, the KTM over the past couple of years, excluding 24, well, partly including 24, the KTMs have gotten stiff. That was one reason a lot of guys like them. Like, you used to see back in the 90s a lot, you would read shootouts, and I rode a late 90s KTM very briefly. I owned it for a day, called the owner back who I was friends with, and I'm like, please take this bike. I can't ride it. It doesn't work with me. Like, I had a CR250 was my next bike, and it carved, like, just the way it cornered. Like, you lay it over where the front went, the back would follow it. You could steer it with the back end a little bit if you wanted. But it was very intuitive turning motorcycle. I'm not fast enough to have issues on a dirt bike with stiffness. That's for fast people. I don't ride hard enough on a two-wheeler to really flex it. But I'd heard that this, like, last couple of years, the KTM got really stiff. And when you watch the shootouts and read them, you don't hear a lot about the KTMs having that weird European feeling anymore like you did back in the 90s. So I think that handling-wise, they've become, I can't attest to that, it seems like they've become a lot more in line with the Japanese handling. And actually this year, they have I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. They have a higher level model, like a pro model. I don't remember what it is, but they have a 450SX, and then you can get a higher end spec of that bike. And I think that bike is coming with a unique chassis that has a little bit more flex. And I think that's the one that the Supercross guys are using.
Yeah, no, you're right. So they had a nice what I thought was a pretty good platform in like 21, 22, and where the bike had a lot of flex in it, but it sucked in the whoops. So they stiffened the hell out of it in the 23, 24 model. And so I just rode a 23 Husky last weekend for an enduro race I did. And yeah, that bike is way stiffer than my 21 Husky at home. So they went too far to try to make it a supercross bike. And now I think they're trying to kind of take steps backwards because they realized they made a mistake and they went too far.
Do you think that the development for most of the models is, you know, KTM came out with some really good developed stuff. Is Husky and Gas on their own and KTM doing their own stuff, or are they all doing it still all together because the machines are so similar?
It's all together with variations. So like the 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 24, so KTM's always on the latest generation, whatever frame and components those are. And then Husky's usually a year behind, and Gas is usually 2 years behind. So right now, the 23 Gas is like the 22 KTM was. And then, or sorry, wait, do I have that right? I don't know. I can't do math. It's
So
too
the
early.
24
But anyway,
is like the 22 KTM.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So if the 22 KTM was all that and everything, then the gas would be the better bike because it would
Yeah,
still be better than the 24. Because I know that manufacturers like, you know, Honda, when they went from the 08 to the 09, lost it. They lost the
yeah,
handling. You know,
yeah.
I don't know
And
if
so
they've gotten
that's
it all back, but they seem
and
to have gotten
I feel
some
like
of it.
we're yeah, I feel like we're kind of seeing that problem. So like the problem that KTM had last year where the bike was too stiff and no one could ride it really well. I feel like they've kind of fixed it in the KTM now, but now you're starting to see that problem again in Husky because you're looking at Mookie and Craig and they're crashing a lot. Like
A
they
lot.
can't ride that frame. They've had some horrible luck. So I feel like they inherited the problem that KTM had last year, and they're not going to get a fix until the following year.
And
Do you think
last year, I don't remember which publication it was because I typically will watch two or three different 450 or two or three different 250 shootouts every year. It's almost like I want a dirt bike. I don't know. But I remember them saying last year, I don't know if it was Motocross Action or Vital, it might have been Racer X. Y'all can go back and watch them if you want. But I remember one or more of the publications, it seemed like preferred the gas last year. And I don't feel like the frame was different. Because I remember specifically them saying the gas had a different swing arm than the KTM or maybe the Husky. And they were kind of saying last year in the shootout, one of these publications or multiple, that they actually kind of preferred the gas because the swing arm and some of the other component selection, it might have been the clamps, I don't know. But I remember the swing arm standing out as having more flex than the one on the KTM. So I felt like last year they were running the same main frame, but the parts that were getting bolted to it were a little different. And they preferred that some of what was used on the gas offered a little bit more flex.
Yeah, I can't remember if they were doing the same frame last year because Gas it was just coming out, but yeah, I do think like right now I think Gas is probably the best value for money. Um,
well,
they take some of the like more high end parts off of the KTM, and that's your basically your gas, and then they slash the price like $2,000.
well, it's always better to save money. You know that they did a
Yeah.
MotoGP test this weekend also, and the rookie on a gas was fastest.
Mm.
That's interesting. That's gonna be
Yeah,
fun to watch. I
which
can't wait for MotoGP.
I know it's going to be great because, you know, not to shift gears too much here. I just did a little touch on on MotoGP because it seems like everybody's throwing daggers at Mark Martin or Mark Marquez probably what I would consider one of the greatest motorcycle racers of all time. You know, the Ducati guys don't like him. The Honda guys are pissed at him. Everybody's throwing, daggers at him because they want to not have this guy get on this 2023 MotoGP Ducati and go out there and kick their asses, which I hope happens. I'd rather him do it on a Honda, but it is what it is. You look at, they have Yamaha, Honda, Gas, KTM, and Ducati. They have all these different models. And where I was going with this, and the question I was going to ask you guys, because you guys got to watch the race and I didn't, Triumph was supposedly in the 250 class on the East. The top 10 finishes that I saw, there was no Triumph motorcycles. And I know I'm bouncing around here a little bit, but there's so much information and data on my pad here that I'm struggling to get it all out. What happened to the Triumph?
I don't know if it was motorcycle as much as it was just incidences in the race. Big first turn pile up in the 250 class took out Evan Ferry early. Jalik Swoll, I think he was right. He was running okay for a little bit. I know in the heat race he got demolished. Absolutely, Pierce Brown took him out. So I think they had a little bit of a rough go as far as just incidents on the track. That being said, in qualifying, they were not the fastest. I think that they still got a little bit of development to do on the motorcycle, but I think they'll figure it out. Like the bike looks fine, and it doesn't look like it's like completely underperforming or underpowered compared to everybody else. The bike looks okay. So
What's
I
the
think with
skill
some
level of
tweaks
their
and
guys?
setup. Evan Ferry's a rookie. He's Tim Ferry's son. So this was his first Supercross race, and the kid actually, for the amount of diversity he had in a night, he did pretty well. He had to go to the LCQ. He went down in his heat race, but
Didn't
he
he
won the
win? Didn't he
LCQ.
end up, I know he was leading the LCQ. Did he end up winning it? Do you remember?
Yep, he won the LCQ, but then that first turn pileup took him out. So hopefully he's not hurt. That's a rough way to start your career if you get hurt in a first turn crash.
It got most of the field, didn't it?
And then yeah, it did. So that's the other thing is between Max Anstey, like everyone's expecting Deegan to come out and crush it, and he got piled up in that first turn pile up, and same with like McAdoo and Hammaker. So like there was and Vial. So there was a lot of really, really fast guys that got taken out early. So hopefully next week we'll get to see a little bit. It'll be a little bit of a cleaner race, and we'll get to see like how these guys actually do.
Because I didn't get to see it. Did they get them all off the track quick enough so that they didn't have a restart? Or
They didn't end up having a restart. But I mean, there was a couple contacts. I mean, one guy just, thank God there was a pad there, because one guy basically went face first into the wall. But there was a big old crash pad there that was able to soak that up for him, thank God. It was nasty, but that's racing. And one thing that's kind of funny was I'm wondering how Yamaha's going to handle Deegan. Because earlier this year, we had Anderson and Lawrence get into it, little helmet grabbing, little smacking, heated. And that was the thing. But Deegan got piled up in that first turn crash, and he bit his right side of his handlebars down. My wife's sitting here watching him go through a rhythm section, and he turns and flicks somebody off the track. And I'm just like going, I bet Yamaha has a conversation with him about that. I want to like that kid, but I want to like him because I think he could be the next big thing coming up behind Jet. And I think Yamaha is counting on that. But
yeah, but you got to separate the dad from him, because the dad is a detriment to the sport. whatever you think of his father, and but the metal militia bullshit and the attitude and the drugs and the partying. I know the dad doesn't do it now, but he did, and that attitude rolls over on the child. That you can do no wrong and that you don't have to have respect. And the kid doesn't have any respect. He threw his motorcycle down last year, and he ended up going and pushing it back in. But I'd have fired his ass on the spot if that was my guy.
It's
bring it back. Respect.
I'm kind of obviously not for the drugs and the partying and all that. That's not a good thing for the sport. These guys used to be wild back in the day. It seemed like, if you go back to the Matasevich, even before that, like the Ricky Johnson era, those guys in the Ricky Johnson, Bob Hanna era. I mean, I was very young and it could be perception, but it seemed like those dudes were pretty wild back then, and they'd probably have some serious disagreements. They'd take each other out. It seemed like it kind of got mellowed out a little bit, maybe in the late 90s, but it seems like, not to steal Plessinger's name, but it kind of seems like the Cowboys are coming back. Like it's kind of getting Wild West again with face-to-face confrontations and, flicking people off. If I was a parent and I took my child to a Supercross race, I don't think I would like to see a factory Yamaha rider flicking off people on the side of the track. We know what it means when you stick up your middle finger, and it means the same thing as if the words come out of your mouth. So he just sat there and basically said, up you, F you, to, in front of tens of thousands of people and everybody watching at home. I have a feel, Yamaha doesn't play. I tell everybody working with these guys in the industry, it's like, I call them the Blue Mafia. Like nobody will do a more professional event than Yamaha. But if you treat them wrong, or I'm not saying if you're honest, but if you don't behave properly, you don't, dot all your I's and cross all your T's, you'll end up in a ditch somewhere and they'll never find you. It's the Blue Mafia. So I have a feeling the bosses at the Blue Mafia are probably going to slap him a little bit. They probably should. I think, again, I want to like him because I think he's going to be the next guy. And I kind of like his attitude when he sits here and goes, all the haters and the doubters just motivate me. That just motivates me. But at the same time, he's saying it because he's a social media influencer. And when I hear social media influencer, I just want to stick my finger down my throat and start puking, because I think most social media influencers are kind of assholes.
I do think some of this. I mean, I agree. I agree with you. Fully realizing that we're on a podcast. But one of the things I think that's gotten lost a little bit is the dude showed a lot of heart this weekend. He rode a mangled bike. He could have. No one would have blamed him if he had just pulled it in and called it a night, and he didn't. He rode friggin' 15 minutes and 2 laps, and then 1 lap, and he made it work, even though the bike was an absolute disaster. A lot of 3 other dudes decided to call it a night. So the kid has heart. He will put in the work, and he does do it. But I do agree with you. There's a lot of noise around him that makes him hard to like.
And I'm glad you pointed that out, because I thought it last night, and I'm glad you mentioned it now, because I remember I was a big James Stewart fan. I grew up in a poor inner city neighborhood, and I know when Bubba was first starting getting kind of big, most of the people were behind him. There were a few people that were like, and I was just like, dude, if this guy brings more people into the sport, brings more people into the dealerships, gets more people excited about Supercross, I'm all for it. I was a huge James Stewart fan.
I think let me cap onto that. I think in the beginning of his career, I would say for 3/4 of his career, the guy was stellar. Super.
You're going where I was going, I think. Keep going.
He innovated the sport with the scrub. I mean, there were just things that guy could do on a motorcycle that nobody else could do. And yeah, I'm not a huge fan guy. I don't get all gooey for most people. There are a few people that I really enjoy, because they're what I would consider above bar. And he at for 3/4 of his career, that guy was it.
And you
Last
have
quarter, I don't know if his dad got involved or who got involved, but it just went away.
And I think part of what ruined him for me, and I respect everything he did, and he's one of the greatest riders we've seen in the sport. And you have guys like Plessinger, great personality, may or may not ever win a championship. And then back in the day, I was a huge Damon Bradshaw guy. Like, I was probably the biggest Damon Bradshaw mark on the planet. Even had his hair cut back when I had hair. And when I was a young guy looking at
years ago.
Oh, this is we're talking 1991. Here's Damon Bradshaw with his frosty mullet in the Fox ad, and I'm going to my mom's bouffant hairstylist going, highlight me, make me look just like this guy. Spent a lot of money looking like Damon Bradshaw. But, I think James Stewart really did both. He had a great personality, and he was able to close the deal. At this point, I look at his brother, and I respect his brother more than him. And like we were talking about Deegan, what ruined it for me with James, it kind of I wouldn't say it ruined it, but it kind of put a blemish on what was otherwise just a stellar career, a great ambassador for the sport, a great rider, great personality. It was at the end, it was like he'd go down and bend a lever and he'd quit. I watched that guy quit again and again and again in his last year or two. And maybe he had some physical ailments I just wasn't privy to, but I would watch him quit over and over again. I'm like, what sport is this? What sport is this? This was a sport where a guy breaks his leg, his femur's sticking out his pants. He's still going to roll around the track and get points, where it's like Bubba would tip over and break a nail and he'd be like, I'm done for the night. Again, I don't know what his physical ailments were, but yeah, Deegan was incredible last night because he finished. He got what he could get. And I give him all the credit for that.
Well, you look at James, or you look at his brother, Mookie, and that guy, you have to have respect for him because he almost has no advantages. Everything he does is uphill battle. He's fighting every inch that he gets, and he keeps fighting, and he doesn't give up, and he just keeps fighting, and he keeps going, and he keeps going. And you have to have huge respect for that personality. He may never be a champion, but man, you just have to want to shake that guy's hand and say thank you for your effort and all that you do to show these young kids that hard work does mean something.
Right. Yeah, and he does it with a smile on his face too.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible. We're gonna shift gears a little bit. I don't know. Did anybody check out King of the Hammers that went on this week? A lot of cool stuff went on out there. There was also a couple weeks ago, Dakar finished. And how did you pronounce his name, Chaz?
Oh, Ricky Brabeck.
Ricky Brabeck. He won his second Dakar. His girlfriend, Sarah Price, got fourth in the UTV class that she's in. And she won a stage, first American woman to win a stage. So hopefully we'll get Sarah Price on to talk about that. I don't think Ricky will come on the show because we're not mainstream enough for him, but I'd love to have him on to talk about his Dakar classes. The guy that got second is a 2 or 3 time Dakar winner, one on a Honda, he's one on a KTM. And he was on a KTM, I believe. Honda got first and third. I don't know if you guys know this, the Dakar. Have you guys ever looked at the Dakar winning history?
No.
Oh, you got to go just check it out for yourself. But KTM has just an astronomical amount of victories on there, because that's kind of how they made their name. But BMW's got victories, Yamaha's got victories, Honda's got victories. I think Honda has a 3 or 4 year stint in the beginning of Dakar where they won it in the 70s. And, now they're back. Yamaha, I don't think Suzuki is on the list. I didn't see Suzuki. While we're asking about Suzuki, Ken Roczen, got on the podium in third this weekend. What do you guys think of his chances to work his way up the points? Because he's seventh, I believe.
Yeah,
on that
he's been
ATV.
riding phenomenally though. Yeah, that bike still works, man. There's nothing wrong with it. Like it's really impressive what they've had a, what is it, like a 5-year-old, more maybe older, 10-year-old motorcycle at this point with very limited development, and it's still very competitive.
Suzuki
But
sales are
yeah,
off
Kenny,
the charts right now. You know that, right?
They're what?
which is,
They're off the charts right now.
As far
dude,
as
People buying that 450 motorcycle because Ken Roczen is doing good on it.
what's the saying? Win on Saturday, sell on Sunday.
Yeah, but he's not winning. But dude, people love Ken
Yeah,
Roczen, and they're going and buying that Suzuki because of Ken Roczen.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's still a good motorcycle. I rode one not too long ago, and the bike works. It turns. Like it's everything that you want a Suzuki to be. Um, it's just a little old, but like your average rider, they don't know. They don't, like, you don't feel it. Um,
I think that
but yeah,
there's too much power for
Kenny's.
most of your average riders, anyways. I mean,
Oh,
I'm going to tell you this right now. If I was going to go buy a 450, I'd be an idiot. I should go buy a 250 because
yeah, you're right.
Well, you need to buy a 125 or maybe even an 80.
Well, I mean that's only because I'm light enough to ride a 125.
Oh, here it comes. Here it comes. I've been sick, Joe. I'm losing weight.
Good, good, good. Yeah. I can't help but think like I think Roxon's doing an incredible job with what he has. I don't remember if the Suzuki was winning shootouts back in 16 or 17 when they developed that bike last. It's probably still a good bike for a lot of guys. I mean, I have to be honest, like with my low skill set, I think I could see me buying a Suzuki because of the certain things that they say about it. Like it peaks out at 8,500 RPMs, where a lot of these other bikes don't peak out till 10 grand. And since it peaks earlier, it's more of a mid-range motor. It has more like that old school 4-stroke bottom end feeling to it. So it seems like for certain guys, it's probably still a good bike. I don't think it would make me any difference what I rode. I think I would suck equally on all of them. Get a little work done to the rear shock because I hear the rear shock on the 450 is a major problem. Obviously, Roczen is not running that shock, or the factory forks, or the factory almost anything else except the frame and the engine cases. But like last week when he went down in the mud, or a week before, I think he was in a mud race. He stalled it. It's like, oh, you're going to lose 3 spots right now because you have to kick that bike. You can't just boom and go. The Kickstarter has already cost him positions this year. I got to believe at that level, the bike is holding him back some. I mean, he's getting older. He's had nearly career-ending injury a couple, 3-4 years ago when he was on a Honda. I want to say, I think if he was on a more modern brand, he'd probably be higher in the points. I bet he's giving up something.
He probably is. Ken Roczen is my guy for the award for tenacity. Maybe that's the wrong word. He's physically disabled. Okay. So if you go look at what it says to be a disabled human, he's disabled. Both of his arms are an issue. The doctors say that he should never even ride a motorcycle ever again. He probably couldn't swing a hammer to frame a house because he couldn't hold on to it. There's other jobs that he probably can't do because not because I'm not saying not because he's a motorcycle racer or he doesn't have skill, but because of his physical deficiencies now because of his injury, and yet he can still ride that motorcycle as well as he does. You have to take your hat off to him. And if I was, if you want to go and say, hey, I want to meet a specific individual, that's the guy I want to meet. I want to ask him what drives him, what's in his mind and in his heart that keeps him going, because he's the toughest guy on the field, because he's the one with the biggest deficiency and he shouldn't be there. And he's there and he's right up in the top. The push button probably is hurting him. I cannot believe with all the money they haven't figured out how to make that thing have an electric start yet.
Well, I can't believe that they get banged every year for the rear shock being terrible. It's like you don't have to do anything. Just buy a different rear shock. That's it. You don't have to change the geometry. It's a great turning bike. It's kind of a pig. But swap the rear shock, put a decent shock on it from the factory every single year for the past 5 years. The magazines complain about setting up the rear shock. Fix it. How hard is that?
Dude, why don't Suzuki make more ATVs? Because they don't care. They're building little cars in Asian countries and selling the shit out of them and making gazillions of dollars over there when they don't feel that this market over here is making them any money.
Yeah. The same with the street bike thing, man. They stopped doing MotoGP all entirely because they just didn't see value in it, I guess, which is bizarre to me.
They dominated a lot of the stuff for a while.
And it seems like they're putting effort into some of their street bikes. I do see them on Facebook. I know it because I troll them every time I see it, where they're updating or coming out with a new street bike model. And I'm always in there in the comments like, new quad racer, please, as ATV on demand, because, I don't care. But they're doing stuff in certain segments. But yeah, dirt bikes, no, and obviously sport quads, no. But that being said, I'd probably, if I were in the model or market for a new bike, I'd probably consider an RM450. Less expensive, turns great. I'll send the rear shock to Race Tech, no problem.
Why would you send the shock to Race Tech? You're never going to use more than a couple inches of the suspension, anyways. Yeah, I went there, Joe. Yeah, I went there. Damn.
Sometimes you need the bike to help make up for your lack of talent. So I'll just go there with it. Yeah.
So everybody listening to this, Joe is my friend, and there are off-air digs that he gets me with all the time. And when he just serves me up with one, I cannot pass it up. Sorry, Joe. That was on there.
It's not hurting my feelings. Not hurting my feelings.
He's got a thick skin, thank God. Chaz, so what do you see in the motorcycle industry that's going to change anytime soon with any of the things coming up?
I'm excited about the new Ducati. The Ducati that's supposed to be coming out, I think it's 2025 for MXGP, and then coming over here shortly after. That's going to be an interesting motorcycle. There's some changes in how they're doing like the valving
an off-road bike for Ducati.
Ducati's making a motocross bike, and it's going to be cool. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about. I want to see a Triumph in person. I haven't had the opportunity yet, so I'm curious especially when their 450 comes out. That'll be fun to go take a look at. And then of course the electric bikes, man. Stark. I've seen some videos and I've listened to some people who've ridden them, and they say that when you put that bike in full like 80 horsepower mode, it's basically unrideable because of the amount of power it generates. So that's going to be intriguing to see come out, and hopefully they'll find a place to race them.
Dude, I think you're already starting to see. I've noticed on the internet some in our area of the country, they're starting to get a little bit. I don't know if it's at a specific track. I think they're going to multiple tracks. I'm sorry, I don't have better details on this, but you're starting to see E-classes popping up at some indoor motocross places here on the East Coast, Midwest. See, electric classes are coming.
And I think that's a great spot for them, is like in the arenas.
I saw a post from Honda that said they are 100% devoted to this EV motorcycle thing. And I can't believe that they would go that direction. You know, Joe, you and I have had this conversation where we think that they should bring the EV motorcycles into your local towns and generate a motocross track, you know, where your baseball field is, so that we can teach kids about the sport. And that I agree with. But as far as overall, I'm just not a fan of the EV industry. I think that it's going to flounder out in some areas. In some areas it may stay, but you know, they're having problems with the car industry. You know, Ford and Chevy have both said, we don't think we're going to go here.
Well, you know, it's extremely different. Like we're comparing, the only thing that what we're discussing has in common is electric power. But there's a big difference between building something bigger than a 1,500 pickup with 4-wheel drive, and you want to hook a 5,000-pound trailer up to it and you want to get mileage out of it. That's very different than a 230-pound motorcycle with a rider who is going to go ride 20, 30-minute motos at a time, could put the thing on charge on a generator back at the trailer if he wants to boost his battery up before he goes back out. Or, I mean, if you have a dirt bike that has a couple hours of use on a charge, that's all you need to have a fun day at the track, or even have a race day at the track. I think it's going to be great for younger riders to teach them how to do it. But I'm an old ass man, and if there was, 5 minutes from me, there's a floodplain, and if they build a motocross track on it during the summer, and they're like, hey, look, there's houses on either side of the river here, but you can ride electric dirt bikes on this motocross track on this floodplain, I am not going to be the least bit mad that they won't let gas bikes go there, because gas bikes would just get it closed down. If you can build an specific motocross track, for people of all ages, because if I want to go ride out of Cincinnati, I'm either going to go an hour and a half to Haspin Acres in Laurel, Indiana, where I grew up riding and I like to go ride, or I'm going to go in 2 hours to Attica, Indiana, to the Badlands, or I'm going to go, I'm not going to go anywhere and ride that's not at least an hour and 20 minutes from my house. If I could go ride motocross 3 nights a week for recreation on an electric dirt bike, sign me up.
And dude, I'm in for that. I'm in for that. I'm just not in for the electric so-called takeover, because to me it's not going to happen. It's not part of the reality of it, and I'm not buying in. I'm just not buying in.
Yeah,
I think the electric bicycle thing is pretty cool, other than the fact that you see them burning all the time. I don't know why they can't get them to not ignite. It probably has something to do with something that I'm not educated on, with the corrosion in the connections of the battery. Because I believe that there is the way you put the batteries together, if it gets corroded, it's going to have a problem and a meltdown like that. They're, again, not schooled enough on it to answer the question, other than to run my mouth. Let's go back to gas motors, but you're not going to put a gas motor in a mountain bike and ride it in places that need to be quiet. And I think Joe, you're spot on that. Play parks with motocross, ATVs, go-karts could replace some of your baseball fields and soccer fields and bring our youth into off-roading in a huge way. And that's the reason I would back it. You know, Chaz, you're at the age of having kids. Joe and I are old, so it's
I
kind
think
of
Chaz has been sitting here dying to jump in. I heard him a few times.
No, no. I just want to say I think you're right. There's a place for electric motors. There's a place for electric motorcycles. I don't want to go to a Supercross and watch an all electric field. That having sitting there in silence would be just bizarre to me. I don't want to go to So there needs to be noise. There needs to be a combustion engine for certain venues and certain racing. But yeah, if I can go next door and rip around in a vacant lot and not piss off my neighbors, like awesome. I get to have my fix midweek and not get in trouble for it. Like I'm all for it. So, and then also too, Leonard, you talked about the Honda. The Trey Kennard went to Japan and raced a Japanese national on the new electric Honda, and
I saw that.
And he did great. I mean, the bike still needs some development, but it's coming. It's going to be here before we know it.
Yeah, that's where they're putting all their eggs in that freaking electric motorcycle instead of giving us a new ATV, them dirt balls. But Chaz, why don't you fill us in on anything that you know about the GNCC series? Your dad is a truck driver for one of the teams, and do you know any of the new up and coming information about anything that's going on there?
Not a ton yet. I know. So my dad, he's not doing GNCC this year. He's doing NEPG, National Enduro. And but I know Stuart Baylor, who is one of the sponsored riders. He is swapped over to Kawasaki this year, and he has and his race team is going to be running all Kawasaki's. And everything that he said about it so far is that he's very happy. He was on KTM last year, and he struggled with getting parts and keeping the bikes together. You know, because basically, like I think he had like 5 riders under his tent, and he had 10 motorcycles. And towards the end of the season, it was hard for him to get the parts to keep all the bikes together. Now that he's with Cowie, he's got no problem keeping everything. He's got plenty of parts, plenty of bikes. So I expect Stu to be very, very good this year. But other than that, I haven't heard much else about GNCC.
Okay. What was that?
I do some time.
I'll text you. Sorry about that. My dad was asking me a question. Dad asks questions. You jump and take care of whatever the man needs. My grandson's getting baptized later on today, and that's what he was asking me about.
Cool.
Yeah.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a big thing. Switching to Kawasaki, that's different. I haven't heard a lot of good or bad about the Kawasaki motorcycles.
Yeah, it's kind of they came out with a new bike this year. It's kind of the same thing. Like I haven't heard anyone say that it's like the end all be all. It's like no one said it's the best thing ever, but also no one's really complaining about it either. You know, and obviously it's working for Anderson, so like I think it's the bike's gonna be fine.
When you go back and ride some of those events back east, you're riding a Husky.
I'm riding whatever someone will give me to ride. I rode a Husky this last weekend, and it was great. I loved it. It was stiffer than the other one. The time before that, I rode a Yamaha, a 23 450, and but I didn't love it. I could see that bike being great in like in like a motocross track, but in the tight woods, it was for me too much bike and it was heavy. So I wasn't in love with the Yamaha. and then with time before that, I was on a KTM, and when I fly in, I just am, I borrow whatever bike happens to be available for me.
Usually that's set up ahead of time before you get there.
Yeah, so Redline usually has a couple of test bikes that they have. They'll put hours on the Redline Oil's the company that my parents work for. Um, but they have test bikes, so they'll put a certain number of hours on a bike with one version of oil and another version of oil, and so they'll do two identical bikes. They'll put like two different oils in it, and then do AB, and then tear them apart after like 70 hours, and then do AB comparison to see like which version ends up holding better under those conditions. So usually I just ride whatever happens to be the test bike that weekend.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, we had a great show. We talked about a multitude of different things. Didn't cover much ATV stuff other than Chad Weenan. I know Chaz is the motorcycle guy. Joe and I bounce all over the motorsports deal. We like everything. So, we are a motorsports podcast. So my ATV guys, I know that you're probably not real happy with me that I wasn't an ATV show, but we're going to be doing more shows with different people involved, talking about everything motorsports, because we are a motorsports podcast. So look for a diversified show base. Joe, I always bring you in and let you know ahead of time where we're going to go so that you can try to do some homework on it. You got to watch Supercross last night, so it fell right into your lap. Thank you, Chaz, for coming in with your insight. You're my resident motorcycle guy that I go to, because I don't over two wheels very often, but I appreciate everything you guys brought to the show today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and for anyone who's like upset that we didn't do enough ATV discussion today, Wednesday night we're going to drop a test of the 2024 Raptor 700. It didn't change, because without a competitor you don't have to update the bike, but we took a little different twist on it this year. I mean, obviously we're doing a full test, but I had a couple of cross-country racers, who typically race YFZ 450s, ride the 700 this time around. And it was cool because neither of them, unbelievably, after 18 years on the market, neither of them had ridden the bike before, especially for any period of time at all. So it was kind of an eye-opener for them as to what the bike was, and had the chance to ask them what their opinion was on that Raptor potentially as a cross-country race bike, which, you can tune in Wednesday night on ATV On Demand's YouTube channel. We'll premiere it Wednesday night at 8, and you can see their opinion for yourselves.
That's awesome, because I love that Raptor platform. It's it's got so many upsides to it that the motor's super reliable. It has a higher top speed for desert, for most of your really off-road courses. With the right suspension package, the machine is incredible, and it's a lot of fun. Yes, it's heavy, but when you're going high-speed desert, that weight doesn't hurt you, especially in some of those big G outs. It actually helps you and lets the machine come through.
It's only 20 pounds, like 18, 20 pounds heavier than a 450. A little higher center of gravity, but on actual scale weight, it's about 20 pounds.
Yeah, but when you get done and you put the suspension mods on there and you set it up, your handlebar height is almost the same. I haven't measured seat height, which I'm going to have to go do that, so that I know where the seat height is. But handlebar height it's almost the identical height. So you're not as stock form. Yes, you're taller and more tippy, but when you're in a widened out machine with a setups for performance, no, dude, the thing's incredible. It's just incredible. I know, Chaz, we're talking about something that's foreign to you. I'm gonna have to bring you out and have you ride an ATV so that you can get to it. just so everybody knows,
And
go ahead. Go
I
ahead,
said
Chaz.
Dane took me out to the dudes one time. I had a great time. I loved
So you
it.
ran over your leg, right?
Yeah, I did do that.
Oh no.
No, so just so everybody knows, Chaz is I would have to say you couldn't necessarily consider you a professional, but you are, because when I go follow Chaz through the desert, and granted, I'm not following for very long. It's just a very short, brief moment in time. Uh, he he uses every piece of the desert to put his tires on, whether he's sideways or straight up and down or however it is, whether he's going through a turn, he's finding traction, on the side of a cliff or on the little berm in a wash, whatever it is. He's figured out how to put that rear tire down to get traction, and it's actually pretty cool to watch. And no, I have no skills, so I can't do it, but I attempt, so I know if he's doing it, the guys that he's riding with are doing it, and the level has just gotten up there. But Chaz, we'll get you out for an ATV ride and show you what a real performance quad is, and then I'm sure that you'll quit riding those evil dirt bikes and get on a four-wheeler.
I'd love to give it a try.
Excellent, gentlemen. Hey, thank you so much for the time. Have an amazing weekend, what's left of it, and we'll catch up with you guys on the next one.
Awesome.
Happy
Thank you.
Sunday.
See you later. Bye-bye.